As long as I can remember, I've always had a thirst for life. What makes us vibrant and healthy? I've scoured the planet for the best ingredients, cooked for over 1 million, and tested all the supposed magic pills only to find empty promises. But I've heard tall tales of this wonder plant.
We co-evolved with this plant. We know that it has been a part of our medicinal landscape for probably tens of thousands of years.
Plants have always been our source of medicine, and they continue somewhat indirectly to be that way.
I honestly think that cannabis is here for us to heal, and I think generations before we were using it.
It feeds people, it clothes them, heals them, and even provides shelter.
It's world transforming. The medicine itself, the plant itself, has all of these uses that can heal the world.
It is such a fascinating medicine that we're only starting to scrape the surface of.
It inspires religions and opens minds.
I was educated by my patients to teach me what cannabis can do.
It evokes controversy and debate.
There is something really, really wrong with the system where there is a product sitting there that can save people's lives and the government just won't let you have it.
It seems crazy that we allow people to consume tobacco, and we know some of the really significant harms of alcohol in our community, and yet we say that we can't stop adults from making those decisions, but we do say this for cannabis.
And is the source of a love-hate relationship with humanity for longer than any other cultivated crop.
I'm not one to say that this plant is a cure-all and it's going to cure every single disease out there and it's going to work for every single person. But if it helps even put your symptoms at bay, that's something huge for a lot of people.
We have patients that are off their meds that they were on for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years.
It has been known for probably 4,000 years that cannabis treats epilepsy.
And I've been a family doctor for 47 years. I've never seen a medicine work so effectively and is so safe.
And how do we use it to wake up? How do we use it to know ourselves better?
This isn't just about profit, but this is about healing the community.
The entire industry needs a re-education, but the entire world also needs a re-education on cannabis because for 80 years we have not been allowed to study the plant.
Can one plant possibly live up to all this hype? If so, it just might be the most miraculous plant on the planet.
I know for a fact that I would not be alive without cannabis.
So I set off across the globe to meet the leading experts in health, medicine, and cannabis.
It's been a medicine for more than 4,000 years. It only was not a medicine from about 1942 to 1996. I mean, if we go back to the first materia medica ever written, according to the Chinese oral tradition, that's the Ping Chao Ching, which was allegedly written in 2637 BC. And cannabis was in the Ayurvedic materia medica around 1100 BC, and it was in the United States Pharmacopoeia from the 1850s until 1942.
And until quite recently, all of our pharmacopoeia has been derived from nature for pretty much as long as we have walked the planet.
And there has been this castigation of anything derived from nature as coming from alternative medicine, holistic medicine, integrative medicine, and what do they know? Fortunately now with medical marijuana, oddly enough, that's what opened the door.
Hi, Pete. Welcome to my place. This is our clinic here. Come on in and let me show you the place.
So talk to me about cannabinoid medicine. What does it mean?
What does it mean? To me, it means life. And they friggin' forgot to teach it to me. I'm a little perturbed. And I've gone through so many years of education, and I have been learning about the endocannabinoid system on my own for about 10 years. And only about 15% of medical schools even teach it now. So this is very, very important to me that we learn about a respiratory system, a cardiac system, an endocrine system, and yet a system that's 600 million years old. We weren't taught about it.
We've evolved with this plant for human history. The plant's been here with us. And whether or not we've changed because of the plant or the plant's changed because of us, that doesn't matter, but we interact together. So how is it intelligent? It works on different areas of our body through various mechanisms. But the same way that our gut talks to our brain and tells us what it needs to absorb and send to our body, and the other way around, what your brain needs, it tells the little bacteria in your gut. I believe that the plant has a similar communication with us.
It actually is the system that regulates everything else. It regulates hormones, neurotransmitters, immune function, cytokine production, everything. And as we get older, that endocannabinoid system can become, can malfunction. It can become dysfunctional. It can be dysfunctional in younger people too. And that's where cannabis can come to play, because it has such a plethora of cannabinoids, phytocannabinoids, that mesh beautifully with the human endocannabinoid system. So my mission is to change the stigma regarding cannabis and for the world to know about the endocannabinoid system. And I'm choosing to do it through education.
Cannabis is a plant that belongs to the family of a flowering tree called Cannabaceae. Taking less than 1 year to grow into full maturity, the entire plant provides food from the seeds, clothing from the fiber, brick from the stalks. The roots remediate the earth, bringing back nutrients to the soil. The flowers provide medicine and much more.
So just how important are the contents in cannabis?
Years ago, I thought, what would it look like if someone had sufficient endocannabinoids, natural chemicals in the brain that look like THC? And it occurred to me that a number of disorders would fit this description, being migraine headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, and fibromyalgia. And these have a lot in common. We know a study was done in Italy some years ago where they measured anandamide, an endogenous cannabinoid that is similar to THC. They measured that in the cerebrospinal fluid that surrounds the spinal cord in the brain, and found that there was an extreme lowering of those endocannabinoid levels as compared to people who didn't have migraine. So this was a demonstration of what we call clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. We know this can gradually improve with aerobic activity, with a good diet, but also with cannabis. And one of the things that the clinical endocannabinoid deficiency disorders have in common is that they seem to be well treated with cannabis, whereas most other drugs, including the approved ones, work very poorly in these conditions.
And how would you define medicine?
Medicine is very, very difficult, I think, to define. A drug has many different definitions. A drug is something that you use to treat disease with. A drug may be something that affects your physiology. And a medicine is something that is meant to make you feel better.
Since most medicines today don't appear in plant form, I wonder how cannabis will hold up against designer pharmaceuticals.
I just started getting a lot of pain out of nowhere in my stomach when I ate. I was screaming in pain, and my mum just thought, I'm just going to take her to Children's Hospital, which she did. And it was there that I was finally diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I think there is a lot of misinformation about this plant, and there's so many people out there that still don't know and still have that prejudice against it. So yeah, I just want to tell my story because it's pretty miraculous. Crohn's is an autoimmune disease. It affects your entire body. They had me on medication and they put me on steroids, which is a lot of the time the number one thing that they put people on to get the flare under control. But it didn't work for me, and I had a hemorrhage in hospital. And they took me in for emergency surgery and removed 20 centimetres of my small intestine.
Ben was out on a training ride after having done the Sydney to Wollongong cycle race, triathlon fit at that point in time, ready to take on the world, and then got a very sharp stabbing pain on the right-hand side of his spine.
I thought I'd just pulled a muscle, to be honest. I tried to stretch it out, but it ended up locking as if there was a knife shoved in my ribs. I then had to ride another 600 metres, give or take, before I could actually get into my street. And when I got off the bike, I was just walking like this. The neighbour had seen me, came running over. He said, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No," grabbed my bike and ended up collapsing.
The disease is called stiff person syndrome. It affects 1 in a million people. It's actually a bit over that. It's closer to 1 in 1.2 million people.
When I have a spasm, they're quite similar to epilepsy, but the difference is I'm fully conscious, can hear everything, feel everything.
I'd seen a lot of medical conditions. I'd worked in significant neurological conditions, be it Parkinson's, MS, motor neuron disease, paraplegia, quadriplegia. I'd never seen anything remotely like this, and what I did see terrified me.
Both my parents are nurses. They honestly expected to bury me.
What it appears as though he's being electrocuted when it's at its worst.
We've recorded my BP 208 on 190, temperature of 41.5 degrees, and a pulse of 190 beats per minute.
I've recorded Ben's vital statistics, his blood pressure, temperature and pulse, at levels that would kill most people.
The more I looked, the more I found youngsters with terrible afflictions using pharmaceuticals, yet not finding the relief they were after.
Someone with a serious illness like a brain tumour and intractable epilepsy, it turns a family's life on its head. You don't sleep the same way, you don't live the same way, you can't do things normally. Everything in your day has to be worked around, is someone going to be with him at all times?
I was constantly sick, constantly nauseous, constantly having headaches. Well, one day I was actually asking my dad to help me out with some resumes while I was young, and I was walking into the room to ask him, and I fell face first into the ground having a tonic-clonic seizure.
So that was the first time?
Yeah, that was my first time having anything. A few days later, I had to get a MRI, and I found out I had a tumour in my brain.
They're given various names: GBM, glioblastoma multiforme, grade 4, high grade, glioma, malignant glioma. They're all the same thing. It's brain cancer. It is the worst of all the cancers, and no one will dispute that. It carries a almost 100% mortality rate, and only 5% of patients live more than 5 years, which is terrible. Many other cancers have many other different BSTs, best standard treatments. So, breast cancer, for example, the first line treatment, if it doesn't work, there's second line, there's third line, there's fourth line, there's 20 line treatments for some cancers where the first line treatment fails. Brain cancer, first line treatment is BST and no other treatments thereafter.
Lindsay's tumour was causing severe seizures, leading to even more medications.
I remember when he was on very high levels of, some of the drugs that they give them for the epilepsy. I mean, he did get toxic at one point on one of those drugs, and it was horrible, wasn't it? He had terrible headaches, and he just...
I had, burning in my burning all through my insides.
He'd wake up, yeah.
Like, there was certain foods that wouldn't let me eat because of it.
We're conducting a clinical trial using medicinal marijuana or medicinal cannabis on glioblastoma, and because this is such a big disease and with such a poor prognosis, like most of the people when they get diagnosed with their GBM have anywhere between 6 months to 18 months to live. So, and at the moment we haven't had anything substantially to extend that for them. So there's limited treatment.
Seizure is, if you will, an electrical abnormality in the brain. If it spreads to the whole brain, it produces what's called a convulsion. Epilepsy is a condition of repetitive seizures. It has been known for probably 4,000 years that cannabis treats epilepsy. We've got strong evidence from the ancient Assyrians, the Akkadians and Sumerians. So this reference to cannabis treating a condition called hand of ghost. And the experts in these things tell us that hand of ghost meant a seizure that happened at night. And this has been borne out subsequently in the Middle East. From 1,200 years ago, we have attestations of cannabis treating convulsions.
It turns out glioblastoma isn't the only cause of intractable epilepsy.
I am mother to Aaron, who is now 4.5. So when I turned 40, I decided to have a child. He came out perfect, great AGPA, like 9, and all the tests were fantastic. And we had a wonderful first 4 months. And then on the 27th of January 2015, he suddenly had a seizure that lasted 55 minutes. I had never seen a seizure before, and I was on my own, and I thought I was going to lose him, and he was just limp and not moving. And I was like, shocked. What's wrong with my son? Why would he suddenly have a seizure? He had just had a needle that day. They asked me if he was epileptic, and not that I knew of. There was no epilepsy in the family. There's no history of it. They observed him for a couple of hours, and he was fine, but when I brought him home, he suddenly had another seizure. And this happened repeatedly, and his seizures went from anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and 45. One time he actually completely stopped breathing and they had to resuscitate him. So they put him on all these different anti-epileptic drugs, and nothing worked. Actually, everything made him worse. And that's what really drugged him out. Like, it stopped the seizures, but it stopped everything. It stopped his learning, stopped his functioning as a, child, infant, growing.
We started out with basic painkillers for Ben because the doctors didn't understand what was going on. So, you know what, let's bomb him out. What the hell? He at least won't be in pain anymore. Then, because of everything that I'd done previously as a nurse, I said, well, look, we need to look at some antispasmodics because his muscles are in spasm, in constant flux. They didn't stop moving. And I've literally had to massage his lower back, and at one stage there, his buttock had locked so badly in spasm that when I managed to get it to release, the muscle almost came off the bone. And to watch that happen is terrifying. To feel it happen, I can't even begin to imagine what Ben was feeling at that time. But antispasmodics, painkillers, and no damn answers.
Like most people, I grew up believing that illness is best treated with clinically tested medication. But is there really no avoiding such mild or severe side effects?
What we've found in our efforts to synthesize single molecules that are very similar to things found in plants is they have a very singular action in the body most of the time, and it's a strong action, which often has more toxic potential side effects.
If we go back to the year 1900, most pharmaceuticals were made from plants. But there's been this quest to either remove one ingredient, one perceived ingredient as the active ingredient, and turn it into a drug.
And oftentimes we see that when we target one specific pathway, there are other things that are not anticipated that can happen down the line that would have a negative effect.
You're talking about side effects.
Side effects. You know, we try to operate under the principle of above all do no harm, primum non nocere. And yet some of the most common interventions used today in terms of drugs are in fact associated with horrendous side effects that nobody wants to talk about.
They had me on steroids. So I was on one which was called Humira, and I had to inject myself with it. And from that I got drug-induced lupus, and I couldn't walk, and I was in excruciating pain, and I was pretty much crippled. I pretty much didn't have a quality of life because I was just so sick all the time and bedbound and malnourished, so I was very underweight. And it caused all my hair to fall out in Year 12, which I was so embarrassed about, and I had no idea. And I went to my doctor and I said, "Why is this happening?" And he looked in his book of side effects and was like, "Oh, that is a side effect. I didn't know that." There is seriously something wrong in the medical system if a doctor doesn't even know about the side effects of the drug he's giving out to his patients. They had nothing else really that they could do to me, and my surgeon was really, he felt really bad, but he was like, "We're going to have to take your colon out." And I just was, you know, I had a breakdown, and I just said, I can't do that.
What are people to do when sanctioned medicines are sometimes causing side effects nearly as harmful as the ailments it's made to alleviate?
The problem with being a doctor is that we are experts in disease, we're not experts in health. I think one of the things that we've dug a hole for ourselves is looking only at manufactured pharmaceuticals as having a role in healing.
I graduated medical school without ever having received a definition of health, and the best definition I ever had of healing in medical school was the process that happens after a surgical incision. But that's usually not the kind of healing people are talking about when they come to the doctor looking for healing.
There are 100,000 deaths a year in this country from overdoses from pharmaceuticals. And oftentimes getting off pharmaceuticals can have their own side effects.
What's wrong with this picture? I mean, here you've got opioids that are killing 150 people a day that are considered by classification less dangerous than cannabis, which has been shown to not kill anyone.
We have patients that are off their meds that they were on for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So it's an exit plan, exit drug.
So how do you as a doctor know how to use this medicine? Because there's CBD oil, THC, all the different types of cannabinoids and terpenes. So how do you know? How do you prescribe?
Well, first thing is that we don't prescribe. We get to only recommend, because cannabis is in Schedule 1, along with heroin, LSD, and ecstasy. So doctors don't get to prescribe it, and I tell them about delivery systems. We tell them about how you can consume it, and how it can make you feel, and how long it can vary from.
When I saw a patient with a given condition, we discussed all the possibilities, which were conventional synthetic drugs and natural products, and I gave them the option. And many people opted towards natural medicines, including cannabis, and to be quite honest, we did as well or better with those, often successfully alleviating symptoms, and often, most often, with many fewer side effects.
What does that tell you?
It tells me that nature does it better.
Thanks to medicinal cannabis, I've been able to actually reduce opioids and take some of those out of my system, thanks to a plant.
All the options that I was given, there was just too many. and medical cannabis just seemed like a simple ideal. So we went out and we tried it, and it actually worked.
When you say it worked, what does that mean?
Like it worked. It shrinks.
Well, basically within 7
Few
weeks of him starting the oil in Washington State, depending on which hospital's report you look at, one had said 3.2 centimetres and one had said 1.5 or 1.6. The next MRI showed that the tumour had reduced down to 0.8, like 8 millimetres. We saw what it was like for him to be without it. We saw how much his seizures increased. The next MRI wasn't good. It showed increased swelling around the tumour. He cannot stop this treatment. He cannot stop.
So when he started the CBD oil, he went from having 100 at least atonic seizure drops, like dropping to the ground, down to about 50 in an entire day. So there was amazing reduction.
And what did you think?
This is working. Something's doing something.
So how long has Aaron been on the CBD oil for now?
In August, it will be 3 years. And he's flourishing. You know, when I first tried him into childcare for just up to 5 hours on one day, he couldn't last 2 hours. Now he's going 4 days for the 5 hours. So he goes 5 hours of the day, yeah.
And you've got your boy back.
I've got my boy back. And we're an awesome team. We're buddies, we're mates. Is that you? Is that baby Aaron?
There's a lot of chronic disease creeping into Western society that's happened since 1940. Call it a coincidence, I don't know. But since that time, we haven't had phyto or plant cannabinoid input into our bodies regularly as a food or as a medicine or as a recreation. And as a result, I believe a lot of disease could be attributed to a lack of endocannabinoid tone or endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome, as Dr. Russo from the States would put it.
I remember seeing a front page article in High Times that listed a number of medical conditions that they thought that cannabis was useful for. And my thought was the same as some physicians who questioned me. No one substance can do all that. Well, the fact of the matter is that cannabis isn't one substance. It has 512 molecules in it. 113 are cannabinoids. It has more than 200 terpenes. Terpenes are what give cannabis its unique odor, and many of these terpenes have therapeutic value in their own right.
You see all those little white sparkly things?
Mm-hmm.
What everyone says, like THC crystals?
Yeah.
Those are the trichomes. So what you do is put this up to your eye,
mm-hmm.
and then bring the cannabis in towards.
Oh, wow.
You see what's going on in there?
Oh, yeah.
You see a million little glowing mushrooms?
Mm-hmm.
These are glands, resinous glands, made out of fatty lipids that the plant grows that produces the terpenes. There's 20,000 types of terpenes in the world that we're aware of. These are the chemistry in the flowers. And then the craziest thing about these smells is they have a pharmacology that dictate where we go with them.
Mm-hmm.
So THC is the engine in the car, right? And if you've got a Hemi, you've got a lot of THC, so that's going to push you forward fast. But if you want to turn the wheel downward because you just got off of work, you need sedative terpenes, versus if you want to go to a show or do art, you want to have stimulating terpene types. Those are not cannabinoids. It's not THC that's directing where this experience is going. It's the smells.
Terpenes come from the sun, and they're sex hormones of the female plant, basically. They're the pheromones of cannabis.
My mum found this doctor, Dr. William Courtney, and he actually healed his wife of, I think she had 10 different conditions. She was told she'd never have children, all this stuff. And he got her into juicing, and now they have 2 children together. And, you know, I just saw that, and I was like, we have to give this a go. I've been up here now for 3 weeks juicing, and I feel better than I have in years, and all of my symptoms disappeared within 3 days. So my bleeding stopped, my pain stopped. I was living on opiates, which are extremely addictive. Now I don't need any of that because of a plant medicine.
How could a raw plant juice outperform the top medications Morgan had tried?
Understand that this plant has over 500 different chemicals. We've identified over 144 different cannabinoids.
The cannabis plant's almost magic in a sense that it can act on any system, and it's intelligent. It knows where you need to be healed. Even though you may saturate your body with cannabinoids, they'll only have effect in the areas that are required for your healing.
Dr. William Courtney says that most people, when they're on heated cannabis, such as an oil or something like that, they start off at maybe 10 milligrams if they've never had cannabis before, and that's a pretty small dose. When you have raw cannabis, such as juicing or something like that, they have no psychoactive effect. So you can have thousands of milligrams of cannabinoids in one hit.
What I personally find remarkable is that this is a medicine that you're taking a living plant, taking the leaves off it, and you are ingesting this in probably the most natural form there is.
Yeah, I think it's something that's a bit hard for people to wrap their heads around, that a plant can be so healing.
Absolutely love that colour, it's so vibrant.
Even after multiple conversations and many, many different chats, we decided that cannabis oil was our only significant option at that point. Not something that we wanted to do. Ben was as anti-drugs as you could possibly get.
My biggest fear was the fact that it's an illegal drug. It's the devil's drug. You know, I hadn't done enough research, to be honest, but everything that has been portrayed out there, you know, I didn't want to go near it.
It was a blend of cannabis oil and coconut oil. Now, whole plant cannabis oil. I need to emphasise this no matter what happens. Ben has always had THC present in his medication. 5 years he's been taking cannabis oil, and yet he has never once been stoned as a result of taking cannabis oil. Never once.
It's just remarkable. I mean, I've had effects from endones and diazepams, legally prescribed medication, yet something illegal like cannabis was, I'd never had any effect from it.
We discussed it at length before we actually went ahead. In the long run, Ben, as an adult, turned around and said, what have I got to lose?
I just got to the point where I was in that much pain that I needed to try something, and as soon as I did, well, I haven't looked back. You know, prior to medicinal cannabis, I had the best part of 600 or more spasms, right? And since I've been using medicinal cannabis, I've only had three spasms, and my average pain level was between a 6 and a 7. And the lowest I'd had my pain down to was probably about a 5. I reported a pain of 3.
In response to stress of any kind in our body, emotional stress, physical stress, actual trauma, arthritis, anything that causes pain or inflammation or any kind of stress, our endocannabinoid system gets stimulated to start and bring that stress response, whatever it be, back into balance, back into homeostasis.
Cannabinoids are the very substances that are the compounds that are regulating our biological functions, from our memory to our appetite to how well we sleep, and we can produce these compounds on our own. Cannabis is a unique plant in the sense that it produces phytocannabinoids, meaning they're from plants, but we ourselves produce endogenously, which means inside of our own bodies. We produce cannabinoids.
This helps people realize, wow, even if I don't use the plant cannabis, I'm still using compounds like that to maintain my health and to heal. And so that makes it very inviting, very acceptable. If you look at a sea squirt, which is a very primitive organism, it has a cannabinoid receptor that's almost identical to what we have in our brains and in our bodies. And that points out to somewhere around 600 million years ago, we had a common ancestor that developed this cannabinoid system.
This is my little shrine to Shiva and cannabis. Shiva's, goes back to the Stone Age, really ancient god, but he's particularly associated with cannabis. And in this statue, he's preparing cannabis here, grinding it. These are balls of bong balls. They're little, ground up cannabis rolled into balls that he used for preparing bong. He's got material here for straining it. He's drinking it, and then he's smoking a chillum here. Islamic stuff, I've always been a real digger of the whole Islamic scene with cannabis. Dervishes and Sufis were using cannabis for centuries, going back to the early medieval period, wrote about it in wonderful poems, one Sufi saying is, God has granted you the privilege of knowing the secret of these leaves. Thus when you eat it, your miseries will disappear and your exalted mind will become polished. Same with these pictures. We got Ganesh grinding the bong, which is the Indian name for the cannabis beverage, and Shiva's drinking it, his serpent's giving it a tester before he partakes of it, and here he is again with his wife preparing cannabis. This is a group of Indian sadhus preparing a fire ritual, smoking chillums from the 1920s. And this is like a marble statue of a sadhu smoking a chillum. We got another sadhu here. He's atrophied his arm by holding it up continuously as an act of will as part of his yogic practices.
A lot of historians agree that ancient yoga began with cannabis use. And then I also tell my students, even if that history wasn't there, if it works for you, that's all you need, right? Your own subjective experience. So it's cannabis-enhanced yoga, and it's specifically a really slow form of yoga that's for all levels. And if I have my way, organic cannabis.
We have the Color Up CBD isolate here.
Oh, nice.
We also have some solventless rosin here as well if you'd like to indulge too, but as I always say, a little dabble do you.
Yeah. I was actually a type of person that cannabis didn't work well for. It made me quite agitated and paranoid. And so I tried it again in my late 20s, and it was just at the right dose, and immediately I wanted to get on my mat and do yoga because it immediately got me feeling my body. Nice. It's nice. Yeah, that's a good name. A big part, I think, for people to feel their body is to actually enjoy the feeling. So if there's a lot of pain, it's hard to get motivated to get on the floor to do yoga. And the more I experience it and help others into, that altered state that yoga brings, the more I realize this is a sacrament. You kind of lose yourself in the yoga, right? It doesn't matter if you can touch your toes, all of the things that we might bring to a conventional yoga class.
It might take me in a regular class a while to really unwind and let go, but the cannabis helps me just drop into that deep space inside of me.
It's really cool that it's both a spiritual substance and a recreational substance, and then somewhere in the middle it's also a medical substance. So cannabis wears a lot of hats.
Why do cannabinoids and exercise pair so nicely together?
Lately, there's more and more evidence of things that I've thought for 22 years, that the runner's high, which we attributed to endorphins, is really from endocannabinoids. And, you know, it's to make us feel good.
And when I was in medical school, I went to an osteopathic conference, and a doctor named John McPartland, he was presenting a session basically about how giving someone an osteopathic treatment would about double their levels of endocannabinoids. And so I was like, oh, well, now I understand at least part of why it feels so good to get up off the table after a bodywork treatment. And now we know that exercise and singing and you know, all sorts of other things that are healthy and make us feel good are working at least in part by augmenting this endocannabinoid system.
My art, the purpose of my art is to heal myself, to express myself. And you bring something that's never been seen before. So in that way, you're kind of like accessing your God self. It's like, I can make something that's never been seen before. And how beautiful is that? But if on top of that, I can talk to my viewers and bring some kind of reflection that helps them a little bit closer to their path towards God consciousness or their higher self, then that's an extra blessing and a great service that I can do as a human in this time.
Could you talk to me about the cannabis plant itself and your perception of it?
I started smoking at 18 years old, which I appreciate because I feel like I had a big chunk of my life not smoking, developing my own personality, and then at 18, 19, I started smoking weed. That kind of like gives you a different point of view. So it kind of like makes you like think differently, and it's a healthy thing to see things from different perspectives. My problem is I got a little bit of an addictive personality. So like if I like something, I want more of it, and more, and then I fall into like a cycle where I go up, and then as soon as I'm going down a little bit under the normal consciousness, I want to go back up. You know, I don't want to go down at all.
So far, this plant seems incredibly useful for healing and feeling good. But what about all those risks many of us have heard so much about when we were kids?
Armed with a search warrant, federal drug agents break the lock off this fence and swarm this home in South Dade. Drug enforcement officers are looking for illegal drugs.
According to a new survey, if you're a kid looking for drugs, you don't have to go any further than your own school.
Schools are candy stores of dangerous substances, alcohol, cigarettes, drugs like heroin, cocaine, acid, and marijuana.
We live in a culture in our country, we're derived from Puritans, and we have a Judeo-Christian culture, and we are fearful of euphoria. And we live in this culture that thinks being high is bad or wrong.
Because some people are just, they come in, they go, Dr. Uma, I don't want to smoke it, and I don't want to be high. Okay, I appreciate you for saying that.
I've seen over almost 8,300 patients, and almost all of them have been using medical marijuana to relieve their pain. One of the first things they tell me when they come in, I don't want to get high. And they're pretty adamant about it.
The big question is there any reason to be cautious around cannabis use?
There's real risk from cannabis. It happens to be a really non-toxic drug you can't overdose on. But you can absolutely have mental addiction to this. There's small amounts of physical addiction to cannabis. To deny this is to put other people at risk.
I feel that the cannabis entity is like a female, loving in a way. It gives you a nice buzz in the belly, but it's very sticky, you know, like the bud's sticky to your fingers. And then you smoke it and your mind sticks to things like, oh, look at that thing, and just looking at it forever. And then it kind of sticks to me in my life. You know, if I smoke more than 2 or 3 days, it just wants to be with me all the time. It's like, okay, like, we're homies now. So it just sticks to me, and it's really hard for me to remove it. I don't think I'm at my potential when I'm stoned all day long. So I had to consciously stop smoking weed, even though I'm an artist who's part of the psychedelic community where everybody's smoking weed around me, where all my clients either like are part of that industry, and my fan base all smoke weed, and I feel like I'm letting them down, but I just got to be honest to myself and be like, you know what, this is not so good for me anymore. So I'd rather just not smoke at all these days so I can not have to depend on anything.
One of the biggest risks of using cannabis as a medicine is that it works so well. And that means that it could cover up symptoms that one's body is trying to use as a communication to say, we need to change the way we're living, right? And so, for example, maybe someone has chronic nausea. They're waking up vomiting in the morning. They find that by having a couple puffs of cannabis, suddenly that symptom goes away. Do they have an ulcer? Do they have stomach cancer? Do they have something wrong with their diet that their stomach is resisting, right? And if they were to use cannabis for that purpose for a long period of time, would that underlying condition get worse? Probably yes. Not always. Cannabis may help correct the physiology and change their relationship with whatever it was in their life that was causing the problem. But often it can be used as a crutch.
It's especially younger males, for some reason, tend to become so wedded to their use of the plant that they become cut off from life to a large degree. It's like you have a little man cave, kind of metaphorically speaking, and you're hiding out in it, and it's this cozy place, oh yeah, me and my cannabis, and they prioritize it over relationships to the rest of life. So that's the issue with cannabis. It's very seductive that way, although that's almost not fair. She's not doing that. We're allowing ourselves to be seduced by her pleasures, as it were.
I'm treating families with elderly people or children with mental disorders or mood disorders or autism. And I use THC, cannabis, as a tool to change people's minds. If they're not used to it, when you add a little THC, you get to think differently. And that's a real important tool in medicine, is to have people change their mind and think differently about things.
At this point of time, I am not smoking weed. Once in a while, I'll partake, and then I actually get really paranoid, and I'm like, okay, yeah, weed's way too strong for me these days, and it's just not enjoyable. So it's almost like I feel like my body has a self-defense mechanism, where it's like, if I don't scare you at the first shot, you're going to get back into this, and you're going to go like deep into the cloud. Once again, I'm not my potential, and I don't enjoy that. I want to be like the best me, and the best me is like me right now, thinking clearly and saying what I want to say without any mud in between.
Now, I often think of cannabis as a teacher, because for the people that are using it as a crutch for too long, it often will suddenly change the way it affects them. And they'll say, for years I've used cannabis and it's always had this benefit on me. Now every time I use it, I get this side effect. It's usually anxiety or paranoia, but sometimes it actually starts making the pain worse or starts making the nausea worse. And this is typically a sign that they've been relying a little too much on this medicine that seems like a panacea, right? That's how it feels. It helps with so many different conditions.
Are you skeptical?
Yes.
Healthy skepticism?
Yes.
What are you skeptical about?
For me, primarily, is whether or not this would, A, work on keeping the cancer and the tumors small, which is what the oral chemo has been able to do so far. And the other thing is just the side effects, the THC in particular, the different edibles that we've tried before that had THC. I didn't like the effect of those, and then concerned about whether that would allow me to continue to work if I went that route.
So basically, how do we go about it? We start low and we titrate up. So when you're talking about you don't want to be high, I'll make you a promise that you'll never feel too high. And then you decide on how much you want to push that.
I often say to my patients regards the psychoactive effect. So 99% of patients are cannabis naive or never seen, touched cannabis before. So it's important to explain to them everything that's going to happen. It's not like you're going to see pink elephants floating around. It's more like you might see the trees are a little bit greener, or the sky's a little bit bluer, or you just smell that nice flower on the air. You'll notice things that you don't normally notice. And anecdotally from people, from patients, they enjoy being outside more and being in nature more.
I'm going to tell you things. I'm going to tell you, don't trust me, look it up for yourself. And I've done the research for you. And when they say just THC, I'm saying no, you need CBD also. They work in synergy with each other.
I've seen it firsthand. I've seen people that, can't walk, and once they start using this, you could see the pain go away.
What is a dispensary?
Dispensary is where we dispense cannabis and cannabis products. So there's dozens of different ways to ingest it into your system. So we have a medical side where you have to get a medical recommendation from a doctor in order to go in, and then a recreational side where it's basically 21 and over. Flower-wise, there's not much difference. The flowers are all pretty much the same on both sides. On the medical side, though, if you're taking it for medicinal reasons and you need higher doses, that's where the medical side comes in.
I am so against this medical and recreational. I do not like those words at all. We never say your heart is working medically or your heart is working recreationally, but somehow when it comes to cannabis that works with the endocannabinoid system, we're going to segregate.
It's an incredibly hard plant to regulate. It's not like most intoxicants where it's just being used for recreation. And there's not a clear line between where does medicine stop and an intoxicant begin.
We're facing an opioid epidemic. And this, to me, is a solution. And cannabis was used in this country, in the United States, for opioid addiction. It was used for alcoholism. It protects your brain cells. It's safe. And yet, it's illegal.
Armed narcotics officers stayed here all night. Search is on for the suspects.
It's been a Schedule I drug since 1971, when Richard Nixon had a commission to study cannabis and determine where it should be classified, and they concluded it should not be a Schedule I drug, which is what was proposed, and in fact they questioned whether it should be illegal at all. And he ignored his own commission and classified it as a Schedule I drug.
Deputies have to be flown to the remote ridgeline where the pot farm is growing.
There is so much controversy for this one plant that has served humanity for ages.
It is actually a deeply unusual plant. It was originally domesticated in Central Asia, and humans brought it to every corner of the globe. And in each of those regions, it has become specialized for a different purpose.
People in early human history talked about the importance of the stone tool revolution and all the things you could make from that. But equally as important would be the fiber revolution. Hemp fiber made up most of clothing for humans throughout most of history.
Long ago, when these ancient Grecian temples were new, hemp was already old in the service of mankind.
And it especially powered the earliest navies of the world.
This plant had been grown for cordage and coarse cloth in China and elsewhere in the East.
At sort of the dawn of the seafaring era, maybe 1400 AD, sailors would never depart on a cross-country voyage without hemp seeds on board. Because if they were stranded on a desert island, they could regrow their own sails and sail away again.
The invention of rope meant that you could domesticate the horse, and it meant that you could trap and hunt in a completely different way. It meant that you could take foods with you, and it meant that you could also much easily construct houses of a better caliber.
Not only has hemp allowed humans to voyage to new lands and connect with other cultures, but it might still offer solutions to very modern problems according to leading technology developers.
My name is Richard Evans, the CEO and founder of Miraco. We have a focus on technology, research and development. I was introduced to hemp about 12 years ago by a gentleman in England. He said to me, hemp will change the world.
In what way?
The sheer versatility of the plant to create, in some people's minds, thousands of products. Mother Nature's gifted us with a renewable resource. We've just successfully grown a hemp crop in 79 days. So by comparison, typical trees in the southern hemisphere take in excess of 20 years to do exactly the same thing. In 1937, Henry Ford built a hemp car. He processed hemp fiber into a composite. What's most exciting is that he managed to extract the oil to create a hemp-based biofuel that was essentially a replacement for petroleum-based products. So we could be thinking about cars, furniture, housing, clothing, fuel. Plastics is something that's another challenge, that the world faces today, so hemp plastic, of course.
Though some modern problems aren't as evident or physical in nature.
This is a teepee that we use for Native American church ceremonies, the peyote ceremonies, and I also do ceremonial work with cannabis sativa. About 5 years ago, when cannabis became legal recreationally here, we started to experiment with using cannabis sativa as a psychedelic, as a plant medicine. So if you and I were just sitting here smoking the blend that I make for psychedelic experiences, you would be in a really altered state, but it might not be considered psychedelic. It might be more psycholytic in nature, more therapeutic, exploratory, self-awareness, that sort of thing. But when we put you in the right setting, laying down flat, eye covering, the right music playing, the guided meditation, you can have full-blown inner visual experiences, full somatic experiences, being able to see inside of your body and see tension points.
Why is it that you do what you do?
So a lot of the people I work with have been injured in some way in their childhood. And that trauma can play out through violence, right? And also, not just through negative things, but lack of potential. Somebody doesn't live into their potential because they've been injured in their childhood. And so, how do we create a container that can support that healing and that unwinding of the trauma that they experienced? The war on drugs is a trauma machine, but this is my form of activism in the world, right, is to teach people not to rely even on me, right, not to rely on other therapists, but I teach people the skill sets to heal their own trauma. So the trend is breaking, but we still have a long ways to go. People are still in jail for this medicine, something that I do legally, very often, with clients on a weekly basis, multiple times a week. People are in jail for doing this, working with this medicine or seeking healing from it.
People who sell drugs ought to be in jail for a long period of time. I believe that what we have to do is not only interdict and to educate against, but also to punish. We don't punish enough.
The punishment in some countries for making cannabis oil and giving it to the sick for free can be decades in federal prisons, like with Jenny Hallam.
My ex-husband had said to me, "You got to be careful, Jen. You got to be careful, Jen. It's getting too big. Too many people know about you. So don't worry, they won't go after me." Why would they go after me? I'm not selling it. Never hurt anybody. Never made one person sick. I was sitting in my lounge room, and 4 male police officers rock up to my house. I had racks of cannabis lying out drying in rooms. I couldn't hide it. I couldn't stash it. I couldn't run around and just put it into a cupboard or something. It was all there for everyone to see. So I took a deep breath and met them at the door, and he had a warrant, and I said to him, I said, "You're going to find cannabis, and you're going to find cannabis oil." I said, "It's for people that are sick and dying." I said, "And anything that you take from here today could result in somebody's death." And I let them in my house. And they took about 60 grams of full extract cannabis oil, which was 3 different people's cancer treatments. including someone who's one of my closest friends with breast cancer. She passed away within a month. They also talk about 2 litres of the coconut oil, which was used for kids with epilepsy, and kids died. A month ago I had a judge that wanted to put me in jail and basically said it was the equivalent of manufacturing ice and that I deserved to go to jail and I deserve the full force of the law. So it all depends on the judge that you get on the day, which is scary.
Jenny Hallam had actually seen a story of a documentary that we had put together.
I didn't know Jenny from a bar of soap. She saw my son's story on his Facebook page, Roll on Ben Oakley.
And as soon as she'd seen that, she immediately reached out to help us. Offered a supply of medicinal cannabis oil, a blend of THC, CBD and coconut oil. And she said, look, I honestly believe that this is going to help.
I just cannot understand how we, as a compassionate country, could send someone to jail for being so compassionate that they are manufacturing a medicine and giving it away to people to save their lives. How on earth can that be against the law? It's a plant, for goodness sake, that we are trying to criminalise.
Nobody should go to jail for that, and
if she does?
It's just terrible.
Lindsay?
It's just ridiculous.
Have you met Jenny?
Yeah, I have met Jenny.
Does she seem like a criminal?
No, she's not a criminal. She's a wonderful lady.
In any other field of human endeavour, if you save someone's life at risk to yourself, you're a hero. Jenny Hallam will always be my hero. She gave me back my son. You're talking about a plant that can be grown just about anywhere, that can be very, very easily accessed. What would you do? What would you do if it was your child? Would you break the law?
Yes, we were growing it illegally because it is not legal. It wasn't legal at the time to grow in Australia. And so my parents were taking a huge risk. I felt really guilty about it, and it caused a lot of stress on me because I was constantly worried, are the police going to come? What's going to happen? We got a knock at the door, and my mum opened it, and it was the local police from my town. And so they raided the place. At the time, I was really sick again, and I've never felt fear like that in my entire life. I can't even explain what it felt like to feel like, being so sick and having something that actually works for me, and then making me and my family feel like criminals for it.
There's the added stress put on a family that's already dealing with illness, that they've got to wear this extra burden of having to break a law to keep their family member or loved one alive. It's just unfair.
Are we protecting people? Are we improving public health by keeping cannabis illegal? In my opinion, and in basically every academic inquiry that's ever looked into this, the answer is no. Prohibition does not improve public health. It does not reduce the frequency of cannabis use in the youth. It doesn't protect people. Prohibition just fills up the jails and clogs up the judicial system. So prohibiting it doesn't work, right? Education works.
Prohibition started lifting primarily when California passed Proposition 215, allowing Californians access to medicinal or medical cannabis. It was said to be the greatest marijuana achievement in political history. 14 years later, the next milestone hit the Rocky Mountain state of Colorado. The first place to legalize the recreational use of this controversial plant. Ron Signor was among the first business valuators to focus on the emerging hemp and cannabis sector.
It was passed here by referendum by the people by a wide margin, by a 63% approval margin. People said we believe that cannabis should be legal.
Tell me about the different types of businesses that you're seeing emerging now in the cannabis and hemp space.
Well, first it's going through these evolutions where the small players are getting absorbed by the larger players. Location and efficiency is becoming much more important. A lot of the people that are in the business are deciding whether they want to be in the retail side and the dispensing side, the grow side, cultivation, or the processing side, making edibles and the processing and extraction part of the business.
After countless generations of ancestral use, here we are, at the dawn of its modern commercial future, after being away for decades. But the big question is, where will industry take this plant?
Plants are always evolving and changing naturally. Over millions of years they change, just as every living organism does. Once humans get their hands on a plant, it starts to change very rapidly. They direct the evolution of the plant. They start to push it in the directions that they want it to go in. And so it becomes a different kind of organism.
The Redwood Territory of Northern California is home to much of the underground innovation that happened to cannabis during Prohibition, contributing to many new genetic varieties.
Originally, people came up here from San Francisco during the Back to Land movement, Haight-Ashbury, late 60s, early 70s, and settled in these remote hills where the logging industry had already come through and decimated the land.
And then cannabis slowly came into it.
But Alpenglow Family Farms is keeping the health of the earth and soil in mind.
This is a biology-driven farm. We're not putting nutrients out of a jug onto our soils. We're trying to bring in the intelligence of the earth to feed our plants. So we're a regenerative farm, and what that means is the constant sequestering of carbon. And one of our goals here is to build soils. And in that, if you look at the forest is one of the most amazing closed-loop systems you could ever acknowledge. There's no soil trucks, there's no fertilizer trucks ever going into the forest, and it just maintains itself.
And that's not how most farms operate these days.
No.
Traditional agriculture of the past few centuries has led to topsoil erosion and also led to the infamous Dust Bowl of the early 1900s.
All that happened when folks were just monocropping and not really caring for the soil like you should.
So what has been the result of monocropping?
Oh my goodness.
Complete loss of biodiversity.
Biodiversity refers to the ways different species of plants, fungi, bacteria, insects, and animals interact to keep the land thriving. Could regenerative farming plant a seed for the future of commercial agriculture?
3 years ago, we were able to come out of the green closet. You know, this is our life work. We've been so proud of this. My daughters have been going to school and not being able to share, you know, how we live.
Us growing cannabis allowed us to live off the grid and to be homesteaders. It's amazing. It's magical to be a part of something so real and something so untouched by humans. How to be a part of that and then learning these practices on how not to become part of the problem.
The whole world is looking at us right now for our cannabis. So we have a chance to sneak in our farming practices, showing regenerative farming is the way to move forward.
I travelled the coast north to a facility that buys cannabis from Alpenglow Family Farms and packages it for consumer purchase.
We're about to see a production facility that processes cannabis.
So this is a legitimate business?
Yes, this is a fully licensed cannabis business in the state of California. So over here is where we process all the pre-rolls.
So how does it get from the farms to this stage where you're actually rolling them?
Well, we bring them. We bring the flower down from the farm. Then we grade the flower to decide whether or not it's of high enough quality to actually be a part of our Blue Humboldt brand. If it has pesticides that cannot be remediated, we have to destroy the entire crop.
Here's an interesting question then. So the state makes you destroy it generally if it's got pesticides on it because of health concerns.
Correct.
I find this really fascinating. Coming from a chef's point of view, my journey is all about understanding health. It seems to me that cannabis is actually leading the way in as it goes to actually having stringent laws in place so that the plant itself can't have these harmful pesticides that we know are causing so many problems to our health.
Correct.
Yet, in the supermarkets, for instance, or the way that food is grown, which I believe is another form of medicine, those rules aren't as stringent. And I wonder if cannabis is actually going to lead the way here.
We're hoping that it will. We should be setting standards as high as the cannabis standards.
What type of cannabis do you use?
Organic. That's part of my vote and protest. If I go to a dispensary to pick up cannabis, that's my absolute first question. What do you have that's organic? And if they say nothing, which they rarely do, there's always something, I would just walk out. And they would lose my business. And that would be my protest. Before, 1930, we didn't even use the word organic. Everything was organic. But after World War I, and then certainly after World War II, war chemicals were introduced. And we are all products of generations and decades of being brainwashed into thinking that we need glyphosate to kill our garden weeds.
Tell us about quality of the actual plant. How important is that?
Well, at this point, I don't use any medicine that's not organic, and I try to find medicine that's grown with intention and care.
Right now, we're at the top of the hill of abundance. That's what we call it. And it's been so abundant over the last 10 years for us in teaching us who we are. We grow cannabis here. We grow cannabis like no one else can grow cannabis.
It's organic?
Absolutely organic. It's full of the energy of the earth. As you can see in front of us, this is Mabini. It's a female mountain. The Aboriginals have a lot of energy here. So, as you can imagine, plants, when they're not organic, they get fed chemicals all day, every day, so they can grow real fast under artificial light. They hold all that stuff in them, and then they put growth hormones on to make bigger yield, and sell that to smokers and stuff. And that builds up over time. More and more people are going to have to change towards organics. So we want to sort of set the benchmark of organics, how you do it, how you think about it, why the plant is actually here, what other goodness can be derived from it. Fresh is best, all those concepts that we lose for convenience.
While I definitely lean towards organic sun-grown vegetables, are there any benefits to growing cannabis indoors with a controlled environment?
I have to smell in here.
It's quite wonderful, and what's amazing is these plants you look at right now, there is a patient out there that will be receiving this plant as a medicine. In this farm we have mother plants. Those are plants that, if you like, maintain the self-sufficiency. We don't need to import product. We take cuttings from these mother plants. 10 days they sit in an incubator which nurtures them. They move to the next phase, which is called hardening. In other words, you are now building the robustness of the plant. You are getting it ready for flowering. Flowers is where the oil and the medicine is. Now, for medical cannabis, for regulated medicine that must be 100% the same every time, this plant has to come from a stable mother plant that is bred for a medical condition. With one of our plants, particular to epilepsy, you want to take one cutting, you'll get an identical replication. You take 3,000 cuttings, which you can see right now, you get an identical footprint. So when we move to oil extraction, when we then produce the bottled medicine, you are working with an exacting, it's a fancy word, but pharmacovigilance, this standard of quality.
Oftentimes, it's not just the flowers that consumers want. Cannabis extracts have become a booming business, but how exactly are these businesses extracting their product from the plant?
So tell me about this facility here and how much industrial hemp you've got bagged up here.
We have about 20,000 pounds here of processing material. So we're going to take that material and process what we see here into a fine grade oil, which will then be processed into a nice distillate, which will then potentially be processed further, made into manufactured goods.
Now this is industrial hemp, so that means low or no THC?
Almost none. Very, very low.
Has this been bred to have those qualities, lower THC, higher CBD?
Absolutely.
Okay. So there's cannabis that has high THC, which gives you the psychoactive, and then there's the low THC, high CBD, which is the hemp, which is what you're making for the CBD oil.
Correct. This is what we grow for CBD production, not THC. A lot of people don't want to have an altered state of mind. What we want to have is an improved state of mind. A CO2 machine is a different type of machine that they would use high pressures of carbon dioxide to strip the plant material versus ethanol. There are, other methods too. You can use butane. Some people use butane. There's some methods of using propane.
So the goal is, in any of these extraction methods, is to access,
strip the plant material of the cannabinoids and other bionutrients.
Okay, and that's what this machine does here.
That's correct. So then we would take this bio bag, stuff it in here. We're going to run ethanol through here, and it's going to be at high pressures. There's going to be 2 tanks. It's going to be at about 40 degrees below zero. So that low a temperature is actually going to help us not take off some of the fats and the sugars that we would not want, and we would have to actually do another process later.
And then after that, we have the crude oil.
Crude oil.
But this is a very intense concentrate of the hemp plant or cannabis plant.
Very intense.
So all the medicine's in here.
It is.
Okay, but this isn't the final stage, is it?
No, it is not. We fill the mantle with the crude, and we distill it off similar to as you would do alcohol.
So after it comes out of that machine, this is what we have.
We've taken plant material to crude, crude to distillate. Now we have distillate.
Distillate, which means?
This is the higher concentrate of crude. It's a much higher concentrate, almost to an isolated state.
So if I am to ingest this,
you're going to feel a lot better.
But no THC?
Very, very little.
So CBD. So down the hatch?
Down the hatch.
Well, it's got a really strong flavour, doesn't it? So there's one extra step.
There is. Let's go into the isolate room.
Okay.
In here is where we make isolate.
So isolate means?
Isolated CBD itself. Nothing else in there but CBD. We pour pentane in. We get the temperature up to 30 degrees Celsius.
So pentane is an alcohol?
It's a solvent.
Okay.
You can see it spinning. It's heating it to the perfect temperature and mixing it so that it will bond with the pentane. We take those pentane jars and we put them in freezers. And the freezing process causes the pentane to separate everything else, and crystals form on the side.
And the crystals are the
isolated CBD.
Isolate.
Our vacuum ovens are where we'll melt that back down. We'll at 250 degrees. The whole time we're pulling this at 600 pounds vacuum. And that is taking all the solvents out of it, so that all that is left after cooking and vacuuming is just the isolate.
So this is a very important step to make sure that the end product is pure.
Absolutely. That is isolated CBD.
So neutral flavour.
Neutral flavor.
So who uses this?
Where does this go to from here?
This is for the clientele that would want THC free. If you want a absolutely THC free product, you're going to use isolate.
Hey, how are you? Thank you.
Can I get credit for you?
I might get one of those CBD lattes, please.
8 is on 3.
8 ounce, thank you.
Cool.
I couldn't help but wonder if this refining process would send cannabis down the same path that wheat, sugar, and even the coca plant went down, where their refined state no longer resembles the look and the quality of what nature produced.
The evolution of cannabis is just speeding up. It's accelerating. For 10,000 years, we took care of them, and we pick the seeds from the plants that we like the best, and then save those seeds and replant them. And then over the course of the century, we started understanding how genes are carried through generations. We learned how to read the DNA in the plants, and we could figure out what genes control what traits. It's become very powerful. And the rate of change in all the major crops that we work with started to accelerate. Barley and corn and soy and rice are all coming out much more frequently, and we're figuring out how to bend them to our will. Cannabis went through a different process. All of that modern breeding that's happened in this century has never happened to cannabis. So our job is to apply the tools that let you do rapid plant breeding to all of those traits to make the plant really work for farmers, to make it stronger and more disease resistant and higher yielding, but also to make plants that can become targeted medicine.
So what are we looking at here?
Well, we call this the Phyllis Galaxy, and each dot is a plant. So
A cannabis plant.
A cannabis plant that we've sequenced the DNA of.
How many have we got listed here?
Oh, there's, 3,000 to 5,000.
In my lab only I have 700 different types of cannabis, different chemovars that have a different combination of compounds. And if you take all the high CBD strains that we have, and you check on epilepsy, how it affects epilepsy, you see that even though they have the same amount of CBD and THC, its effect totally different. Sometimes in different mechanism, because different compound will bind different receptor with effect. So we need to understand that cannabis is not one medicine.
This enormous variety of cannabis comes not from nature, but from underground breeders.
There's this side effect to advanced breeding work, which is that you end up with these elite cultivars that are much higher yielding than the original varieties you started with. But we abandon the genetic diversity that it came from. Even though these higher yielding crops are supposed to make our food security situation much better, paradoxically they've made it much worse because populations are strong when they're diverse. That's what makes a population robust and powerful, and the same is true for humans.
We need to understand how it's produced. Who are the people producing it? What is their intention? Because people that are producing it just for profit don't care about necessarily the patient. If we don't protect it, we will create a poison out of this plant.
I've always believed that to truly heal and to be healthy, we need to have a mix of modern medicine and ancient wisdom. We must consider putting our healthcare back into our own hands, or perhaps our backyards.
People often grow thyme and rosemary and oregano, things that make their foods taste good, that also have medicinal properties, right? There's many herbs that people grow, and if they don't, then they ought to, because health sovereignty is quite important. If we rely on some system to prevent disease and take care of our health, it's unlikely that we're going to get optimal results, because usually the goal of that system is not the same as the individual's goal.
If more people did this?
Oh my goodness. We would start being able to feed the planet
because that's going to be a real problem as we move forward if we don't all start growing what we can in all of our backyards to some capacity. Whether it's one tomato plant and 2 beans, but we all need to start planting something in our backyards.
Even cannabis?
Even cannabis.
Would you be proud to grow cannabis here in your garden?
That sounds really crazy, but
I would grow it for myself.
I wouldn't think about it as being proud. I would just think about it as a human right.
This isn't the only way to live, but this is a possible way to live. And sometimes it's going to come at a price. And that meant that we had to be outlaws for a while until the rest of the world caught on that this is an amazing plant with amazing potential and possibilities.
And your daughter's relationship with this plant, what do they think? Like,
they don't think it's any different than any other thing that we have grown in the garden.
So yes, I can grow valerian. I can grow St. John's wort. I can grow a whole range of herbs that I can use for medicinal purposes. And yet here's this one plant that I'm not allowed to grow. I think saying that someone cannot choose to take that substance is a human rights issue.
For a person to really heal and change, they have to have some shift in their patterns of thought and in their patterns of behavior. Many of my cannabis-using patients come back to me and say things like, I was able to see myself from a different perspective, and that helped me solve some of my challenges. I was able to step out of my suffering mindset and start appreciating the beautiful things that were right around me that I was ignoring before.
These medicines seem to have their own agenda. We named our clinic Innate Path for a reason because, there is innate intelligence within us, guiding us through these places. The majority of traditional psychotherapy is something called cognitive behavioral therapy. And in the best of scenarios, which means, laboratory, idealized conditions, you get an effectiveness rating of about 22% with that. There's so many things I think we distrust about nature. It's wild. It's not controllable. It's just like our emotions aren't controllable. And it makes sense that any kind of mental health paradigm that comes out of a society that's been somewhat divorced from nature involves a paradigm of control.
One of the attributes of cannabis is sort of to expand consciousness. It opens up people to different ideas, different interests, and looking at things with a different perspective. Now, this all sounds very hippy-dippy, but when this produces a tangible improvement in someone's adjustment to life, it's really an important thing.
Cannabis has been defined as a non-specific amplifier, which is a term applied to other psychedelics and entheogens oftentimes as well. So what it does is function as an amplifier of energy, and it enhances this present moment in a variety of ways. I and others consider it an advanced spiritual medicine because to really understand how to use cannabis to help you awaken requires some basic understanding of that's what you're doing potentially as you're bringing yourself into this now moment.
All along, I've been listening to the experts tell me about how cannabis heals, how it feels, its sacred nature and long history, and I've yet to take the plunge and try it in a new way.
Because we work ceremonially, right, and intentionally, we put a lot of care in the containers, right, and the image of it shows a sense of respect. So let's just take a smell and notice it. What's there for you?
Very calming, very peaceful.
It's a blend of about 15 different strains, all organic, And so this is what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So we use a mortar and pestle to grind it. And I call that making many spirits one. You know, so like every strain has a different personality and a different use. So in this good way, I'd like to offer you this pipe. When it turns green, that's an indication to imbibe. You know, we start these ceremonies by inviting the sacred plant ally into our hearts, our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. And we give thanks for this plant, this beautiful sacred plant medicine, cannabis sativa, for being so available to us for the purpose of exploration and healing. And many blessings on your journey as you explore this medicine and all its uses.
Many blessings to you too, brother.
Yeah. Is it turning green?
She's green.
She's green, all right. So you just take a pull. It might take a couple, so we'll do a couple. Make sure you're getting some medicine, and then we'll pause and see how you're feeling.
Okay.
And without losing touch with the experience, what do you notice? What's present for you?
Some sadness.
Sadness?
Mm-hmm. In here.
In your heart. What else is there around that? What do you notice about that sadness?
What was interesting is I felt like there was sadness around the actual plant itself. Mm-hmm. It was like trying to communicate that.
What do you mean by that? Like sadness around the plant? That, like, tell me what you mean by that.
It felt like it was communicating to me that
it's sad.
It's sad.
It's sad.
For the perception and for the pain.
Yeah.
There's people in jail.
Yeah.
Still for sharing this medicine.
Yeah.
So where do we begin? Well, we begin by setting the cannabis criminal prisoners that are still in jail, wasting their lives, by setting them free. This is something that has to happen that a lot of people aren't talking about.
And we're trying to come out from that place where it's just been illegal and it's been condemned as a dangerous drug. And so we're still getting out from under that misinformation.
Britain's been moved out almost 2 years. Blow up furniture. And too many girls to do.
Jenny called me when the police were still in her house and said the police had raided me. She was terrified. She thought they were going to drag her away in handcuffs and she was never going to see her family again. I said to Jenny at the time, after the police had left, what do you want to do? Do you want to sit back? Do you want to blend into the shadows? Do you want to wait and see what's going to happen? Or do you want to do as I think you should do and you want to attack? She said, we're going for it.
While Jenny Hallam awaits the judge's decision on whether or not the next 2 decades of her life will be spent behind bars, other countries are paving the way for the flurry of new cannabis products to hit the shelves.
I have eaten it, I have worn it, I have used it medicinally, I've used it recreationally, so I see cannabis as a sort of quiver that offers, 50,000 commercial products from hemp.
There's so many things we could do with this cannabis plant. We could be making homes that are fire resistant. We could be making fabric. Right now, cotton is one of the most heavily pesticided crops on the face of the earth. And cannabis grows easily outdoors without pesticides.
I don't want to really be too strong with the word extinction, but we are moving in a new direction on a planetary level.
hemp grows carbon down very fast, very successfully, and then the application to convert that carbon into products that can benefit humanity has staggering significance.
I know a lot about a lot of plants, and I don't know any other plant that does so many things.
Yes, there are doubters, and yes, there will be challenges, but based upon the research that we've done, I do not see any reason why this will not change the world.
I believe it may just be the single most important and beneficial medicinal plant that we've ever come into contact with as a species.
There's no way our endocannabinoid system is going to balance itself because we're so deficient in everything. So, the cannabis plant says, I'm a survivor. If I have to live my life in a dingy grow tent with shit nutrients, well, I will live.
When a patient is not getting satisfaction from their treatment with conventional medicine, you can be sure they're going to be on the search for something better. And in so many instances, this leads them to cannabis.
It's not a magic plant. I think in general, out of all the plants, it has the most properties. But it's not a cure-all to everything, because everybody's individual.
If you look at all the botanical and pharmaceutical medications combined, it's probably the one that is the most broadly applicable, effective, and safe. So it is, really high up there as far as what it can help with. But it can't help with everything. It's not a single solution to all our healthcare problems.
But it has probably the most amount of beneficial properties and uses compared to any other plant.
As someone who was very against it, and to see someone who has actually had first-hand experience with it, I would say that medicinal cannabis has not only saved my life, but it's given me a life again.
If I were going to put it onto a bell curve, there's that small group of patients that it's just not for them. There's a majority of patients where sometime in their life this is going to be a really valuable medicine for them. And there's the other end of the bell curve where I'd say they shouldn't go without it. They just function a lot better with cannabis.
I know for a fact that I would not be alive without cannabis. Like 100%, I know for a fact that I would not be here.
Where do you think you'd be without this plant entering your life?
I don't think you'd be here now.
My life support.
I don't even think you'd be with us now if it wasn't for that plant.
Healthcare providers need to be reminded that at the end of the day, we're all patients.
How do we actually use it to heal? And how do we use it to wake up? How do we use it to know ourselves better?
There is a consciousness revolution going on this planet that has to happen. And a significant part of it, a central part of it, is that to discover that we are our own healers. What the world needs now is to just be very open-minded and creative about what's going to help us, what's going to work.
The foundational belief of holistic medicine is that unconditional love is life's most powerful healer, and the path to optimal health is through self-love. And cannabis is a very effective tool for facilitating that process of heightening and expanding your capacity to love.
I am an optimistic person, a very optimistic person, and I do believe that good will win out, that love will win out, that when politicians hear more of the personal stories, when they meet the people, when they see the joy that this plant is bringing to people's lives, that will win.
Any cannabis is better than no cannabis. Right here, right now on this planet. This plant is magical beyond belief.
I believe in the Love Tribe. It's out there. It's getting stronger. People want to be good. People want to have community. People want to save the earth. People just want to be happy. And they want their neighbor to be happy.
It is the pinnacle of what we are. If I'm allowed to spread and go forth like this, what's happening on our farm,
Well, I'll show you a better version of cannabis that you cannot believe is possible.
I guess that's just the nature of this incredible plant. To send its seeds into a future that's hopefully better and brighter. A survivor in a rapidly changing world. Like us. I'm still not sure if this is the magic plant, or just another miraculous part of Mother Nature. But I do know this. Whatever it takes for humans to live and love well and stick around this beautiful garden long enough to appreciate it in ever more harmonious ways, more and more every day, now that's the seed I really wish to plant.
What do you think, Steve? Yeah. You love it, Andrew? You just love it. Okay.
Vitamin C, magnesium, electrolytes, right? Vitamins. Yeah.
So Pete, this is, we're talking about, these are dicons.
We should see it in close up.
Bright, white, red. But they probably have other characteristics that would come out.
We ferment them.
Oh, bet you that would be amazing.
Okay, ready. Oh, we'll do it over there. So can we see the crude oil?
Yes, that's good.
Awesome. Show me the way. That's so good in here. That's really good. So they're the terpenes?
Yes, absolutely. The terpene profile is what you're smelling.
Hello?
Ben, do you want any of this?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll take the...
We'll do us first.
This plant is really hardy. We have it coming up in our yard, and we didn't even plant it. It comes up in the spring, a month before we can grow anything else, and I don't water it, and it still survives. I mean, it's amazing.
I would love to believe that humanity is waking up.